Chapter 23:14. The Blade and the Rod. Chapter 23:14. The blade and the rod. A strong broadsword will appeared in the entire field. Under this broadsword will, Futian felt that everything he saw in front of him was changing. It was as if this place was no longer as it was previously. Instead, it was now filled with terrifying demon gods. These demon gods were each holding a demonic blade, standing in different positions, covering this corner of the sky. Terrifying broadsword will tore through the space, aiming toward him, as if to crush his will completely. Just this broadsword will alone was enough to shock everyone into silence, capable of knocking them down. Any Renhuang who was not firm enough would doubtlessly crumble under this broadsword will. Unable to bear its intimidation, Xiaomu held the blade in both hands. At this moment, all the demon gods in the heavens seemed to be holding the demonic blade in their hands as well. A fierce storm of destruction swept across the space. Before the blade was discharged, Futian could sense the oppression of the broadsword while slashing down to suppress him. A pressure so heavy it was almost suffocating. It was simply astounding. Even when he was facing those at the peak of Renhuang in the 9th realm, Futian had never experienced such intense oppression. Of course, it may be that someone at this level hadn't really collided with him in the real sense of the word. But there was no doubt that Xiaomu's own combat power was spectacularly horrific. After all, he was the direct disciple taught by the Devil Emperor himself, and a Renhuang of the 8th realm. Once in the realm of Upper Renhuang, the gap in each step of the realm was significant, much like an insurmountable chasm. But Futian was now facing a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor, who was an entire realm higher than him. The roar that erupted from Futian's body of the Great Path became more fervent and violent. The broadsword will descended on his body, but was unable to crush his will. There was a faint imperial divine glory shining upon him, so that he appeared even more impressive. He had inherited the power of several great emperors. Among them, Shenjia the Great Emperor and Ziwei the Great were both extraordinary great emperor cultivators. Shenjia the Great Emperor had dared to challenge the heavens, while Ziwei the Great commanded several great emperors under him. Having inherited the incomparable powers of these two, Futian had constructed an indestructible physical body and spiritual will. In short, he was not that easily shaken. Furthermore, as he felt that potent broadsword will, his body boomed. And an equally intimidating spirit manifested upon him as well. The starlight flowed upon his body, which seemed to transform into a starry sky world. At this moment, his physical body underwent another transformation. He became something like a divine body of the starry sky. Moreover, there was a terrifying howl of an ape that shook heaven and earth. Suddenly, strong coercion emerged as a massive war ape appeared behind Futian. Boom! The war ape trampled above everything, and suddenly the sky roared. The vast space seemed to solidify. This war ape, like a battle beast from the starry sky, was the starry war ape. An unusual vision appeared in the world behind Futian. This sight before them made many cultivators trembled inside. What ability could cause such a vision to appear? Previously, they had not seen Futian using it. The cultivators from Four Corner Village squinted their eyes as their hearts quivered. They had not anticipated Futian to have cultivated this divine method to this degree. The Starry War Song, one of the 7 divine methods of Four Corner Village, could summon the Starry War Ape, whose presence was incredibly wild and menacing. Its attack power was unparalleled. This particular ability was controlled by Shirkuei in Four Corner Village. At the same time, when Futian unlocked the mysteries of Four Corner Village, he had also cultivated various secret methods. This was something known by all the cultivators from the village. Now, it seemed that Futian was using another divine method from the Four Corner Village to fight against the disciple of the Devil Emperor. At this moment, Xiaomu raised the blade with both hands, and the demonic light circulated upon the demonic blade, forming a frightening sight. In this field, many illusions of the demon god seemed to raise their blades simultaneously, ready to strike. Even before the strike was unleashed, its power was already shocking. It was as if it could shatter this corner of the sky, and no one was capable of stopping it. Cultivators from the devil world below wore a solemn expression as their eyes fastened on Xiaomu, who was in the void. Even though Xiao Mu's super-destructive heavenly demon form was physically defeated by Yi Futian, now boosted by the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon, what kind of earth-shattering destructive power would be discharged by this combination? They were expectant as well. It seemed that Xiao Mu had never treated an opponent so seriously. Yi Futian had really angered Xiao Mu, and that had pushed Xiao Mu into his strongest state yet. Gathering all his strength to battle with Yi Futian, Xiao Mu took a step forward, and a majestic and massive figure of the demon god appeared above the firmament. It stood there, containing the most supreme majestic spirit to crush down on this space. In this area, under the figure of that demon god, everything was null, and all beings were inconsequential. 9 slashes of the heavenly demon contained 9 styles of strike, and each strike morphed to increase in strength. When the 9 strikes were released, even the heavenly demon would be cut down, hence the name. Xiao Mu's hands slammed down. Even with cultivation as great as his, he needed to exert an incredible amount of strength to unleash this sword strike, as if on the verge of exhausting all of his energy to release it. Just this first strike alone seemed to have hollowed out his strength and spiritual energy. But at the same time, only when he smashed down with the blade did the cultivators around them realize what was happening. A pitch-black fissure appeared between heaven and earth, and everything was split open and pulverized. At the same time, the illusions of the demon god in their surrounding also mimicked their movements and struck. In this area of the Great Path, a series of blasting light of the blades cut through the void, destroying everything in their path. Even those major figureheads felt their hearts tremble when this strike was unleashed. It was simply too powerful. Just the first strike contained such horrific prowess. This was the true blade technique. Compared with the demonic blade in front of them, it seemed that what they had known before to be blade techniques couldn't be considered technique at all. Terrifying rumbling sounds were heard, and the vision of the great path around Yi Futian was becoming more radiant, as a starry world surrounded by countless stars was formed. When the blade light came down, the starry war ape howled into the heavens, and those surrounding stars created an unparalleled defensive force, blocking the invading broadsword will and those countless sword shadows. At the same time, a rod appeared in Yi Futian's hand, as if it had been transformed by the stars. It was heavy, full of boundless and overbearing energy. When the blade slashed toward him, the rod blasted forth. These two terrifying forces met and collided in midair. The destructive demonic blade slashed through the shadow of the rod that had shattered the space. The power that erupted from the contact began to tear through the surrounding space. The great path was shattered into pieces, and cracks appeared where the attacks had occurred. Xiao Mu's combination was the super-destructive heavenly demon form, aided by the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. However, Yi Futian's divine body of the great path worked in sync with the starry war song from Four Corner Village, and the power of the starry great path. The ultimate power exuded from this combination was unimaginably frightening. The storm of destruction still raged between the two. Xiao Mu's eyes were pitch black and impenetrable. His arm retracted as the blade returned between his hands, raised high above. Dark divine light of thunder fell and circulated upon the blade. An even more powerful demonic light rushed into the sky, and Xiao Mu unleashed the second strike without any hesitation. Each strike from the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon was stronger than the previous strike. Even Ren Huang at the peak couldn't survive just a couple of these slashes. Chapter 23:15. The Air? Chapter 23:15. The Air. Xiao Mu unleashed the second strike, and it was like an angry roar from the demon god. The blade opened up the sky, carving out a series of horrific destructive fissures. Yi Futian raised his head and saw a gigantic and boundless demonic blade slashing towards him, like a strike from the demon god himself. Boom! Surrounded by starlight, heaven and earth seemed to solidify. The starry power was everywhere, so the space felt tremendously heavy. The starry war ape roared madly, as Yi Futian picked up a long rod and smashed it down. This shocking blow wanted to shatter the sky, but collided with the demonic blade that blasted at him instead. The collision resulted in an eruption of terrible divine light that was hard for anyone to behold. There was a loud rumbling noise, and the surrounding great path seemed to be exploding in a most horrific manner. Nonetheless, this strike had been blocked, and could not obliterate Yi Futian, or get anywhere near him. This blow at best was barely adequate. It seemed that even the 9 slashes of Heavenly Demon couldn't crush Yi Futian's attack, and these two had met their match in each other. The hearts of the cultivators below palpitated, especially those top figures from the devil world. Xiao Mu unleashed the 9 slashes of the Heavenly Demon with all his might. Its power had already come close to threaten even peak-level Renhuang. However, the second strike of the 9 slashes of the Heavenly Demon did not seem to pose a real threat to Yi Futian, because it had been successfully blocked by him. The starry war ape, as well as the power of the stars, and his body in the Great Path, were all extremely awesome. Multiple powers now blended into one, perfectly erupting from the center that was Yi Futian. The power that erupted was no lesser than Xiao Mu's 9 slashes of the Heavenly Demon. It seemed that to defeat Yi Futian, the second strike from the 9 slashes was far from sufficient. The force of the second blow hadn't completely dissipated before Xiao Mu took another step forward. There were terrible fissures in the surrounding space, as the Great Path seemed to be torn and destroyed. Another wave of broadsword will gathered once again, as if overlapping and reinforcing blade momentum from before. It was getting stronger. A terrifying coercion blasted down as the sky howled. The Great Path roared as those demon gods appeared, like some heavenly demons. Another strike appeared, blooming with a world-destroying demonic light, overlapping again with the blade momentum from before. They seemed to land on the same track, and smashed down in the same trajectory, but it was heavier, stronger, and more uncompromising. The third strike of the 9 slashes of the Heavenly Demon was already the most exquisite of the first 3 strikes, and also the strongest. This offensive technique was a mass-slaughtering technique created by the Devil Emperor, when he was besieged and suppressed by numerous demon emperors, when he was unifying the devil world. The 9 slashes of the Heavenly Demon had beheaded countless demon emperors, terrorized the devil world, until it was flattened by him. Before he proclaimed his reign, he had always been hailed as one of the terrifying existences in the history of the devil world. He was the first enchanting genius since the collapse of the Heavenly Path, whose name was known throughout the past and the present. After his proclamation as the Emperor, many thought that the Devil Emperor was no lesser than the legendary Devil Emperors of ancient times. He wanted to become the first person in the history of the devil world to unify the devil world itself and unify the outside world. The blade technique created by the Devil Emperor was intimidating, to say the least. It was said that when the Devil Emperor deployed the 8th strike, it was almost near invincible, and no one could stop his blade. The staff technique converged again, blasting toward that 3rd strike. However, this time it was not as before, as the staff shadow was shattered. Even though it was able to block that scary strike, it's the first time Yi Futian's staff technique was suppressed. He was repelled back a few steps. It was not that his own strength was any lesser than that of Xiao Mu, but that the attacking technique he deployed was not on par with the 9 slashes of the Heavenly Demon. After all, this was the ultimate slaughtering technique created by the Devil Emperor. The cultivators from the devil world were a little relieved when they beheld this sight. Although Yi Futian was very powerful, the opponent he was facing was Xiao Mu. No matter how strong he was, how could he possibly compete with the Devil Emperor's direct disciple? Especially when this disciple's realm was higher than his. Yi Futian's inheritance was, after all, from the great emperors of yore, and the Devil Emperor was a great emperor who existed in the world right now. However, if Yi Futian and Xiao Mu were in the same realm, Xiao Mu would probably lose this battle in the end. If he had to battle with such difficulties in a situation where his realm was higher, it only served to accentuate Yi Futian's natural talent and the strength of his combat effectiveness. As the first genius talent of the original realm, this young king of the original realm, indeed did not disappoint. His prestige was not in name only. Otherwise, with so many top figures hanging around, how could he become the king of the original realm? Xiao Mu looked relieved when he saw that Yi Futian was repelled by the 3rd strike. His dark eyes glanced at Yi Futian. He thought that he had finally backed down. Yi Futian had shown signs of defeat with that 3rd strike, but it wasn't enough. He wanted to destroy Yi Futian, and this was just the third strike. After the blade smashed down, its momentum did not disappear. On the contrary, it became stronger. There seemed to be a resonance in this area of heavenly demon. Those demon gods seemed to mimic the same actions as Xiaomu, raising their blades. In the vast and boundless space, many demon gods raised their blades at the same time, and these forces resonated with one another. Before the blade was released, a terrible slaughtering and destructive power had already swept toward Yi Futian, with the potential to destroy everything. Yi Futian had retreated at the third strike, so the next two strikes should end the battle. Xiaomu thought the fourth strike was gathering momentum, and the storm was getting more terrifying, raging in this space. The storm was capable of slaughtering ordinary Run Huang, as it contained incredible power of ruination. Yi Futian sensed this power, and there was a divine light flashing through his eyes, and it seemed to become heavier still. The roar in his body became more violent and fierce, however. Characters flew out as his body morphed with the way. It became something far more terrifying. At the same time, there was a divine light shining at his brow chakra, akin to imperial glory. He looked even more dazzling, like some heavenly deity. The stars in the sky centered around Yi Futian with just one thought, and the starry glory surrounded him. A phantom of Yi Futian seemed to appear on every star, and at the moment, Yi Futian seemed to be everywhere, becoming one with this starry sky. When the terrifying demonic blade came in for the kill, it collided with the starry field and was blocked by the light screen. It failed to come close to Yi Futian. With his body as the center, the stars had formed an absolute field of power, and this area of the Great Path was inching toward the other, on the prowl to invade. Yi Futian's body floated in the center of this starry world, surrounded by countless starry divine lights that showered upon him. The cultivators below watched Yi Futian, their hearts beating wildly. Whether it was cultivators from the Devil World or the Heavenly Mandate Academy, the hearts of those cultivators palpitated. The cultivators from Ziwei, especially, were more electrified now than ever. Yi Futian was like the true heir of Ziwei the Great. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 23:16. Victory and Defeat. Chapter 23:16. Victory and Defeat. The changes to Yi Futian similarly caused the hearts of the cultivators of the Devil World to tremble. Before this, when they saw Yi Futian being pushed back, they had believed the battle to be over. However, it seemed that they were too optimistic. This battle was just beginning. Xiaomu grew stronger and stronger. Yi Futian also rose to the occasion. He kept unleashing new abilities. He had not been going all out at all since the start of the battle. This made the top figures of the Devil World feel somewhat surreal. A 7th-tier cultivator actually dared not go all out when facing an 8th-tier direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. How confident was Yi Futian in his own abilities? An instant change appeared in Xiaomu's demonic eyes. Yet, the more powerful Yi Futian grew, the more it seemed to stir up Xiaomu's fighting spirit. His battle spirit was ablaze right now. A storm swept out, and the silhouettes of the demons in the sky moved, resonating with him. Lifting the blade with both his hands, all the power of the Great Path in Xiaomu's body surged into the demonic blade. It caused demonic light from the blade to pierce the heavens. Terrifying clouds covered the skies. The scene before the crowd was astonishing. On the other side, with Yi Futian's figure as the center, divine starlight shone extremely brightly. His body radiated with imperial glory. Bathed in the divine light, Yi Futian was like a true god. Stars circled around him. His shadow was on each of the stars, as though he controlled all of them. Buzz! Xiaomu slashed down for the 4th time. With this slash, the various demons in the sky also slashed down with their demonic blades at the same time. Frightening cracks appeared in the sky, ripping apart all of existence. Against these demonic blades, no one could survive. Boom! 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 The demonic blades met with resistance this time. They cleaved down on the stars that filled the sky. The stars that circled around Yi Futian's figure formed a light shroud of stars. The blade will of the demons were all blocked off by these stars. Only the domineering blade in the middle, which was the one of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon unleashed by Xiao Mu, cleaved the light shroud apart. At the same time, it shattered a star before it. It was as though no defensive power could withstand this blade. However, the people down below could all sense that the might of this blade had already been weakened. It would most likely be difficult for Xiao Mu to end Yi Futian with this slash. As expected, when the astonishing blade slashed down, countless runes appeared around Yi Futian's body and formed an absolute domain of stars. The blade will flashed, but it could not break through the defense of the stars. Cracks appeared on the stars. Then the momentum of the blade was halted, and it could not advance any further. As the cultivators beneath the sky watched, endless blade will landed on the stars. It caused cracks to form on the stars. However, the stars were not shattered, and they had successfully blocked this ferocious attack. Was this the defensive technique passed down through the teachings of Great Emperor Ziwei? Many people down below thought. Great Emperor Ziwei was one of the most famous great emperor figures in the ancient era. He was a marvel of his time. How powerful was he? Rumor has it that Great Emperor Ziwei could control the various stars in the sky. He was the ruler of a segmentum. Such an extraordinary figure must have certainly cultivated powerful techniques. However, the various cultivators had never seen them before. They had only caught a glimpse of such techniques from observing Ren Huangqin during his battles. Now, Yi Futian seemed to be unleashing the power of the teachings he inherited from Great Emperor Ziwei. How powerful would this technique be? The defensive power of this technique was evident. The fourth blade was blocked. Xiao Mu initially thought that the previous 2 slashes were enough to end the battle. Unfortunately, he was wrong. By now, he had exhausted much of his strength. Each and every slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon took a huge toll on the user. It was already awe-inspiring for Xiao Mu to be able to unleash 4 slashes. Xiao Mu slashed down for the 5th time. His 5th slash was even more powerful than the 4th. The momentum was even more astonishing. The 5th slash caused cracks to form on many stars around Yi Futian. The defensive light shroud before Yi Futian shattered into pieces after being cleaved into half. Although Yi Futian still managed to block this 5th slash, the stars were on the verge of crumbling. It was as though they would be destroyed at any second. Xiao Mu didn't underestimate Yi Futian. From his perspective, if Yi Futian hadn't unleashed the power he inherited from Great Emperor Ziwei, the 5th slash would have certainly ended the battle. This 5th blade was absolutely domineering, yet it was still not enough to defeat Yi Futian. Right now, Xiao Mu felt too exhausted to press on. He took a step forward. He was akin to a demon, as his gaze locked on Yi Futian. Xiao Mu proclaimed, "This next slash should end the battle." He couldn't afford to drag the battle any longer. It caused a huge amount of damage to himself as he unleashed each slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. While the slashes were very formidable, they also consumed much of the strength of the user. Xiao Mu needed to maintain both his flesh and mind at their peak state to truly unleash the might of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. Otherwise, his attack would have the form, but not the essence of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. It would not retain its might too. Boom! A terrifying demonic aura enveloped Xiao Mu. The cultivators from the devil world narrowed their eyes in shock. What was Xiao Mu planning to do? Was he going to send out a frenzy slash? Yi Futian stood still on his spot. He looked plainly at Xiao Mu. He was akin to an almighty god. There was absolute confidence shining in his eyes. He was more or less certain about Xiao Mu's level of ability. From the looks of it, the 6th slash would be Xiao Mu's limit. If Xiao Mu could slash down the 7th time, it was possible for him to defeat Yi Futian. If Xiao Mu could slash down the 8th time, Yi Futian would surely lose. Unfortunately, there was no what if. The 6th slash would be Xiao Mu's last slash. And Yi Futian was confident that he could block this 6th slash. It should be said that Yi Futian didn't intend to block it. Instead, he would retaliate. Boom! Xiao Mu's body changed as he grew larger and larger. He merged with the demons in the sky and transformed into a demon himself. He wielded the blade with both his hands. When his blade will burst forth, terrifying fissures formed in the space. At this moment, Yi Futian felt threatened. He finally moved. An illusory figure appeared above Yi Futian's body. The illusory figure seemed to be Yi Futian himself. It was surrounded by divine light and abnormal phenomena. Yi Futian transformed into a deity and became one with the stars. Endless divine light of the stars shone on him. With his body as the center of the stars, an intimidating power gushed forth. Dazzling divine halos shone brightly. A sword appeared in front of Yi Futian. The celestial force all around Yi Futian rushed into the sword, causing it to keep expanding. It grew larger and transformed into a true starry divine sword. Xiaomu slashed down. The 6th slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon caused the sky to dim as it charged towards Yi Futian. It could even slaughter gods. At the same time, the stars around Yi Futian became one as endless starlight surged into the sword. Yi Futian raised his arm and thrust the sword forward. The divine sword and the demonic blade collided head-on. Rumble! It was as though the world was falling apart. Apart from the divine sword, many stars cracked and shattered into pieces. The stars took the place of the starry divine sword to bear the power of the demonic blade. On the other hand, the blade was also trembling violently. It was similarly enduring an unparalleled power. One by one, the stars cracked and disintegrated. However, the divine light on the starry divine sword shone more and more brilliantly. It suppressed everything that was in its way, causing cracks to start forming on the demonic blade too. Bang! As cracks began to appear on the demonic blade, Xiaomu let out a dull groan. His face was pale. He had unleashed 6 slashes out of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon. Yet, it was still insufficient to defeat Yi Futian. The blade and the sword were both destroyed. One after the other, they broke into pieces. Yi Futian looked at Xiaomu and said, "If you could unleash the 7th slash today, the loser would be me." He stood still, and his tone was calm. It was as though the victor of the battle had been determined. This exchange between the two had indeed determined the victor. At least, that was what Yi Futian surmised. As for whether or not this fight would continue, it depended on Xiaomu. If they continued fighting, the result would not change as long as Xiaomu didn't unleash the 7th slash. Xiaomu stood in midair quietly. His demonic will was not as rampant as before. He looked at Yi Futian and didn't refute his words. It was as though he silently agreed to what Yi Futian had said. Not defeating Yi Futian with the 6th slash meant that Xiaomu had lost the fight. Xiaomu was not able to slash down for the 7th time. If he could unleash the 7th slash, the loser would surely be Yi Futian. Even Yi Futian admitted this. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 23:17. Secret of the Devil World. Chapter 23:17. Secret of the Devil World. The outcome of their battle was decided. Down below, the cultivators of the Devil World were quite restless when they saw this scene before them. Xiaomu had actually been defeated. Even the 6th slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon still could not take down Yi Futian. It had been blocked. After the power that Yi Futian inherited from Xinjia the Great Emperor and Great Emperor Ziwei burst forth, even the 8th tier Xiaomu could not touch him at all. After this slash, Xiaomu was already worn out. Unleashing the 6th slash of the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon had already drained all his strength. He had reached his peak condition right before that moment. However, after the slash, he had now slumped into a phase of weakness. Moreover, his demonic blade was shattered by Yi Futian. Yet Yi Futian was not affected much. Right now he was still in peak condition. His entire body was shining brightly. Brilliant divine halos radiated from his body. It was unparalleled. It looked as though he could unleash his previous attack once more at any moment. Hence, both of them knew the outcome of this battle. There was no need to continue fighting. Xiaomu admitted his defeat. This young ruler of the heavenly mandate realm was actually this strong. The various cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy secretly heaved sighs of relief. They were also moved. Yi Futian had surpassed the boundary of planes and defeated Xiaomu, a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. It would be hard to find someone on the same plane as Yi Futian who could contend with him in various worlds. Even if there were such figures, there would not be many of them. They would truly be rare specimens, and would be monstrous figures who stood at the pinnacle of their worlds. They were looking forward to Yi Futian's growth even more. When he reached the peak of the Renhuang Plain, and experienced a divine tribulation of the Great Path, how glorious would that day be! The ruler of the original realm would truly be able to shock the cultivators of various worlds. No one would dare trespass in the original realm. Yi Futian would become the absolute leader of the original realm. In a tavern in the distance, Mei Ting raised a cup of wine and drank from it. Before the battle began, even he did not know who would emerge as the victor. He was also very interested in this battle. Now that it had ended, he seemed to have a better understanding of Yi Futian's combat ability. After all, for Mei Ting, Xiaomu was a good opponent for Yi Futian, and could check on Yi Futian's ability. Did that person train Yi Futian to this level? It should have been impossible. That person did not have the time to do so. From what Mei Ting learned from Yu Sheng, and the abilities that Yi Futian displayed, their abilities were not related to that person at all. Even for Yu Sheng, that person had merely passed on a set of demonic arts for Yu Sheng to train himself. So, Yi Futian's achievements were all related to the fateful encounters that he had. Aside from being lucky and having many opportunities for him to have come so far in his cultivation, it also meant that he was extraordinary. To begin with, he was very talented. His real identity was even more intriguing now. "Let's go," commanded Xiaomu. Then he flew up to the sky and left the Heavenly Mandate Academy. He was a little weak. Moreover, it was meaningless for him to hang around any longer now that he had lost. The top cultivators from the Devil World took a good look at Yi Futian. Then one by one, they flew up to the sky. Traversing the clouds, they left the place along with Xiaomu. Soon, the group disappeared of those on the ground. Only a tint of demonic aura was left lingering in the sky. The cultivators in the Heavenly Mandate Academy collectively heaved a sigh of relief after the demonic cultivators left. The latter emanated an imposing pressure on the rest of them. Even Renhuang Chen had his guard up the whole time, while the demonic cultivators were around. If the group from the Devil World initiated an attack against them, it would put them in great danger. No one dared to act recklessly. After all, the incomers were cultivators from the Devil Imperial Palace. Fortunately, the source of the pressure had disappeared now. The demonic cultivators leaving meant that the crisis was over. Yi Futian looked in the direction where the demonic cultivators had disappeared to. He appeared calm and showed no sign of joy upon winning a battle. During the battle, he also sensed the immense pressure imposed by the direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. It was Yi Futian's first time encountering an opponent who could clash head-on with him just with his flesh. Furthermore, the 9 slashes of the heavenly demon posed a threat to him. What would happen to him if one of the direct disciples of the Devil Emperor mastered the 7th, or even the 8th slash? How could Yi Futian possibly defend himself against such a figure? How about the Devil Emperor himself? What kind of person was he? Renhuang Yi is indeed an unparalleled figure. Even an 8th-tier direct disciple of the Devil Emperor has lost to you, a cultivator from the Song Imperial City said to Yi Futian. The cultivator was very impressed by him. The wish of the cultivator to become acquainted with Yi Futian grew even stronger now. This battle had once again verified Yi Futian's talent. He was a bona fide exceptional figure able to defeat a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor. Most likely, very few people in the Divine Prefecture were comparable to Yi Futian now. I got lucky. If he mastered the 7th slash, I would most likely not have been able to withstand his attack. Yi Futian spoke humbly. Does Senior know anything about the Devil Emperor? What kind of person is he? The current Devil Emperor is a living legend in the Devil World. He became famous even before Donghuang the Great did. Before Donghuang the Great unified the Divine Prefecture, the Devil Emperor had already ended the era of various demons fighting over the Devil World. He unified the entire Devil World. People claimed that no one, past or future, could compare to him. Not only would he inherit the glory of the Devil Emperors of the ancient era, he even wanted to bring it to new heights. Bring it to new heights? Asked Yi Futian as his heart trembled. Said the cultivator from the Song Imperial City as he nodded his head. I heard that he previously tried to do so. Yi Futian's heart was racing. After unifying the devil world, the devil emperor wanted to bring it to new heights. Yi Futian naturally understood what that meant. The devil emperor had wanted to conquer other worlds and claim them all for his own. He had even attempted to do so before. What had happened back then? Did the devil emperor have incredible figures beside him who were very close to him? Asked Yi Futian. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City had a pensive look. He softly said, I have heard of a secret, though I do not know whether or not it is true. This matter seems to be unknown to many. Even among the top forces, it is but a rumor that goes around. It is impossible to verify its legitimacy. What secret? Asked Yi Futian. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City continued. There were previously two prominent figures in the devil world. It was not just the devil emperor alone. He had a brother. However, later on, this brother of his would disappear without a trace. Rumors claimed that he had betrayed the devil emperor. Others claimed that he had died at the hands of the devil emperor. There could only be one ruler of the devil world. This caused Yi Futian's heart to beat even faster. He could faintly sense that he was approaching the truth soon. It was just that even the top figures of the Song Imperial City knew very little about it. They had only rumors to go by, and they could not even verify the legitimacy of the information. The brother of the devil emperor? Then what was Yu Sheng's status? If what the other party claimed was true, then the brother of the devil emperor clearly had not died, and had always been by Yu Sheng's side. He became a lonely, frail old man. No one knew his status and who he was. However, why would such a terrifying figure claim to be a slave? Yi Futian could not wrap his head around this. What was the story behind all this? This information itself might be incorrect, and that person was not the brother of the devil emperor. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City was somewhat curious. Why was Yi Futian inquiring about those close to the devil emperor? The cultivator from the Song Imperial City was somewhat curious. Why was Yi Futian inquiring about those close to the devil emperor? On that same note, why had the direct disciple of the devil emperor immediately come looking for Yi Futian after arriving in the original realm? Mei Ting, a devil general of the devil world, seemed to be exceptionally interested in Yi Futian. Could it be that there were some secrets behind all this? However, the cultivator from the Song Imperial City did not inquire further about this. Each person had their own secrets. As long as they were unrelated to him, there was no need to pry. He had come to befriend Yi Futian, so he would not do anything to offend him. Prying into the secrets of others was undoubtedly one of the most offensive acts possible. Since there were secrets involved, it was naturally better for fewer people to know about it. Nobody wished to expose everything about themselves in front of others. If Run Huangyi has other questions, feel free to ask me. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City said with a smile. I have cultivated for quite a long time in the Divine Prefecture. Even though I don't claim to know much, I have heard of many things before. He appeared exceptionally sincere in his speech. Yi Futian had just defeated a direct disciple of the devil emperor. The battle was significant, indicating that Yi Futian would attain even higher achievements in the future. He would certainly be able to experience a divine tribulation of the great path. The sky was his limit. Yi Futian naturally sensed the goodwill of the other party. The way the cultivators of the Song Imperial City treated him now was completely different from before. This change happened because of his current status and improvement in abilities. In the past, Song Imperial City wanted to take him under their wing to control him. Now they wanted to befriend him. Nevertheless, Yi Futian didn't inquire further about the matters of the devil world. It would be too obvious if he continued asking about them. Cultivators from all around the world have gathered here. Since the cultivators from the devil world have arrived, most likely cultivators from the other realms will also be here, right? Yi Futian asked. I am not sure about the cultivators from the world of Buddhism, but I think they will be here too. I'm also not so certain about what's happening in the heaven realm currently. As for the human realm, Most likely some cultivators will come over, replied the cultivator from the Song Imperial City. It goes without saying for the cultivators from the Dark World and the empty Divine Realm. Futian nodded his head. This time, the storm in the original realm was growing more and more intense. The cultivators of the Divine Prefecture were not the only ones who caught wind of it. Top forces arrived in the original realm consecutively. Aside from that, before this, the empty Divine Realm and the Dark World had constantly sent more cultivators here. Now, the cultivators of the Devil World appeared, and a direct disciple of the Devil Emperor had descended upon the original realm. Hence, Futian was speculating whether or not the cultivators from the other worlds would also come. He did not know what had happened in the battle back then. The Dark World, the Divine Prefecture, and the empty Divine Realm experienced their most direct conflict ever. The world of Buddhism had good relations with the Donghuang Imperial Palace in the Divine Prefecture. After all, Donghuang the Great had previously ventured to the world of Buddhism to seek the path. Futian knew more about the world of Buddhism because of his relationship with Yusheng. From the looks of it, the Devil World was not close with any other world. However, they also did not bear any obvious animosity towards any world. At least, that was what Futian perceived at the moment. He had previously encountered a mysterious cultivator in the Heaven Realm. As for the human realm, he had never come in contact with it up until now. Now would the cultivators of the human realm also come to the original realm? Does Senior know much about the human realm? Futian asked. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City replied, I know little about it. I learned about it mainly from the ancient scriptures. Some elders mentioned something before. Rumor has it that after the collapse of the heavenly path, the main world formed was the human realm. From there, division occurred, and after countless years, things are what we see today. I heard that the human ancestor of the human realm is quite close with Donghuang the Great. The former has lent his aid to the latter before. The human ancestor has lived for eons. He is kind and is adored by many people. It is said that even Donghuang the Great looks highly on him. As for whether or not the few legendary top figures have good relationships among themselves, that's not something I can possibly know. Futian nodded. Those figures were people on another level. They were at the true pinnacle. They were supreme rulers of the world. The people down below could only speculate about their relationships based on what they observed. Only the legendary figures knew exactly how things were among themselves. However, based on the bits and pieces collected, Futian could roughly tell that Donghuang the Great was truly an imposing hero. 300 or 400 years after he had made his name known, he was already on par with those great emperors who had been dominant for centuries. Besides that, Donghuang the Great seemed to have good relationships with the world of Buddhism and the human realm. Back then, why did Donghuang the Great go against Emperor Yi Qing? Are there truly only 7 great emperors in existence? Futian continued asking. Now that he had reached his current cultivation plane, he had the desire to know more about these things that were unknown to him. He wanted to know the truth of this world and its secrets. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City clearly knew more than he did. The cultivator from the Song Imperial City revealed a meaningful smile. He looked at Futian and said, If there were only 7 great emperors, then does great Emperor Ziwei, who Ren Huangyi met before, count as one of them? If not, what about Shinin the Great? When Futian heard his words, he revealed a pensive look. He pondered on the meaning of these words. The other party smiled and continued saying, The world is too big. After having lived during the age of gods and reached the great emperor plane, the great emperors can create so many miracles. Even if they have truly fallen, they will still leave behind remnants of themselves. Who knows? In some remote corner of the world, there might still be a great emperor who is alive. Futian nodded his head. The existence of Xinjia the Great Emperor Ziwei, and Shinin the Great also made him feel that way. There were too many mysteries and secrets in the world. Right now he still could not comprehend all of it. The ancient god clan is a clan that claims to bear the inheritance of a deity. Is the Song Imperial City considered a force of the ancient god clan? Asked Futian. The other party shook their heads and said, The Song imperial city used to have a great emperor. However, nowadays we no longer bear the inheritance of a great emperor. Hence, we are not considered part of the ancient god clan. In the true sense, the forces which are part of the ancient god clan are like Ziwei imperial palace of great emperor Ziwei. He left behind his teachings to them. Only then are they considered part of the ancient god clan. This is actually similar to the previous topic. The forces of the ancient god clan are considered fortunate. The teachings of the great emperors were left behind and were passed down to this day. Sadly, most of the great emperors ended up like Shinin the Great and were gradually forgotten to history. Understood, responded Yi Futian. If that was the case, the ancient god clan contained the inheritance of the great emperors in the true sense. They could actually be considered the descendants of these great emperors. If an extraordinary figure appeared among them, they would also have the opportunity to prove their path to the highest level. However, after so many years, the divine prefecture had only given birth to two great emperors, Dong Huang the Great and Emperor Yi Qing. This was highly likely due to the situation in the current world. There was also a high chance that Dong Huang the Great and Emperor Yi Qing had experienced some extraordinary fateful encounters. Senior, thank you for your explanation, said Yi Futian. What I said cannot be considered an explanation. I merely shared some unimportant details. Even if I didn't tell you now, Ren Huangyi would learn in the future. My words are not worthy of your thanks, replied the other party. Ren Huangyi controls the original realm now. Perhaps many years later, the original realm will be a new world. Clearly, the elder was hinting at something else. The new world he mentioned alluded to an independent world. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Chapter 2319, Relic of the Cultivators. Chapter 2319, Relic of the Cultivators. Although the original realm was an independent interface, it was still part of Divine Prefecture. It had been under the rule of Dong Huang the Great since that battle long ago. If Yi Futian wanted to obtain control over the original realm, it meant that he most definitely need to step into the imperial realm. Clearly, this was the cultivator from Song Imperial City flattering him. After that, the cultivator from Song Imperial City left as well, and did not linger on much. His goal was to befriend the Heavenly Mandate Academy, but it was still premature to form an alliance. Yi Futian had also made his stance very clear in regards to the alliance. It was necessary for those interested in this alliance to follow him in declaring war on the dark world. This was a precarious business. What's more, even though the cultivator from Song Imperial City was optimistic about Yi Futian's future and heaped praises upon him, these were just superficial gestures. He knew very well that Yi Futian's position was, in fact, very unstable. Now that the original realm had attracted the attention of all the realms, the devil world and other forces had descended close behind each other, which meant that the original realm had become the center of an impending storm. Yi Futian and the Heavenly Mandate Academy were the center of the original realm. They were the ones in charge of it, and everyone knew what that meant. If he wanted to climb towards imperial eminence, it would be a difficult journey fraught with many life and death situations. It sufficed to say there would be many narrow escapes on this journey. The fact was that Yi Futian was not some exception. Out of all those many splendid talents, who wanted to be on the road to becoming another great emperor, how many of them actually succeeded? After the collapse of the heavenly path, the great path suffered considerable damage, and the road to becoming the great emperor was blocked. Many had perished on this already thorny journey. How many among them had really reached their goal? Yi Futian had endless potential, but there were also innumerable dangers. Yi Futian himself didn't dwell so much on these thoughts. He understood some of these things, but it didn't do any good to think obsessively about them. The only way ahead was forward. Today's conversation with the cultivator from Song Imperial City revealed some things about the top figures and the top principalities of this world. There were the divine prefecture from the east, the western heavenly world, the ancient heaven realm, the empty divine realm, the devil world, the dark world, and the human realm. which was the center of the world at the time when the heavenly path collapsed. The rulers of these 7 worlds, especially the ancient god clan from ancient times, represented the pinnacle of the cultivation world. They were the only ones who had the privilege to speak for the entire world. They were the existence that decided the rules of the world, and the domain chiefs' manners of all 18 domains, and those top principalities were just secondary players. They were merely managing the world for them. He now had control over the Heavenly Mandate Academy and Ziwei Imperial Palace, but he still had a long way to go. If the teacher hadn't scared off those men, there were still many principalities in this world who could have destroyed the Heavenly Mandate Academy. Just one existence had survived the second divine tribulation. It would be tough enough for them to overcome, no matter how rare the existence was at this level. The divine prefecture was not without them, and whatever the divine prefecture had, it only stood to reason that other worlds must have some of them as well. Furthermore, he had mentioned those unknown existences in his conversation with the other. Who knows? Perhaps the cultivator from Song Imperial City had something that he didn't yet make fully known to Yi Futian. After all, it did have involvements at a higher level, so the other man might be more cautious in what to reveal. The road ahead of him was long. It seemed that he had to cultivate to the top of Renhuang before he could have some credibility. At that time, with the help of the physical body of Xinjia the Great Emperor, he may be able to explode with extraordinary power. But for the moment, he was limited to defeating existences of the first level of the Great Path Divine Realm, and subjected to considerable backlash if he leveraged the physical body of Xinjia the Great Emperor. He had no idea how many years it would take him to set foot on the peak of Renhuang. After the Devil World and Song Imperial City cultivators left, Heavenly Mandate Academy returned to normal, and Yi Futian continued to cultivate quietly while paying close attention to the changes in the outside world. Every few days, someone would arrive to report the latest from the outside world, and every time there were new movements in the original realm. For example, somebody had excavated and discovered the relics of the Great Emperor, and that some principalities had even obtained the relics of the Great Emperor. When Yi Futian heard about this, though he was enticed, he did not intend to fight for them. He had already reaped a lot from before, and that alone was enough for the others to look at him sideways. If he wanted to take all of the inheritances, he would only put himself in harm's way and become a target of public outrage. On the contrary, if each of the top forces took some of these relics from the Great Emperor, he would attract far less attention, sticking out like a sore thumb. On this day, Yi Futian, Lord Taixian, Emperor Nan, and the others were gathered together. In the courtyard, Yi Futian presided over their meeting. Although he was younger, he was now the college chief of Heavenly Mandate Academy, the ruler of all of the original realm. So even the elders had to defer to him. Everyone was working toward the same objective, assisting Yi Futian to reach the pinnacle of the cultivation world. Because of this objective, these top figures were able to move forward as a team. Although their ultimate goals and beliefs were different, at the moment, they adhered to the same objective. Yi Futian was the one they had chosen from a long time ago, and they were now more certain than ever. In addition to the cultivators from the Devil World, the cultivators from the human realm have also appeared. Today, only the cultivators from Heaven Realm and the world of Buddhism from the West have yet to make their appearances. But the Heaven Realm was known to be secretive, so perhaps they have already arrived without us knowing. Emperor Nan continued. After the Devil World, the cultivators from the human realm had also descended in the original realm. All the worlds had gradually made their way to the land of the original realm. What kind of storm would be waiting for them? Are there many cultivators from the human realm? Yi Futian questioned. Not much for the time being, but there must be more that we don't know about. Now the news had spread to the original realm. The cultivation world in the original realm is about to boil over. The situation today is comparable to the one in the past, said Emperor Nan. Actually, because of the changes currently taking place in the original realm, the situation at hand has far exceeded the one in the past. Back then, not many cultivators came to the original realm. The two just couldn't be compared. Emperor Nan, however, was a cultivator who had experienced that turbulence 300 or 403 or 400 years ago. The rumor has it that the human realm was once the center of all the worlds after the collapse of the heavenly path, and the place of blessings for human cultivators. The supreme great emperor of the human realm is called the human ancestor, whose name speaks volumes of his importance. All the cultivators who came from the human realm this time were said to possess the aura of the human ancestor, an abundance of righteousness. Emperor Nan continued, I also heard that the human realm claimed to be the most orthodox of the cultivation world. Yi Futian nodded. He also wanted to take a look at all the cultivators from all the worlds. The human realm was the center of the world, formed after the collapse of the heavenly path. He was curious how the cultivation world there would compare to the one at Divine Prefecture. How would their cultivators compare to the one from Divine Prefecture? In addition to the arrival of cultivators from all major worlds, many amazing relics have also appeared. And now, evidence of human cultivators has appeared in one of the most important sites, said Emperor Nan. Yi Futian's eyes sharpened slightly. Same as the Ziwei segmentum? Exactly. Emperor Nan nodded. The same world as Ziwei segmentum had appeared. What could all this mean? If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2320, Shinny Continent. Chapter 2320. Shinny Continent. Ziwei segmentum was a world long sealed by Ziwei the Great. So, what kind of world would it be with human cultivators? At present, most of the cultivators and top principalities from various worlds are attracted by this continental relic that has just appeared. Not to mention, a world with human cultivators resembles a complete world, which entices a stronger desire to explore it. And according to the news, the cultivators in this world are most extraordinary, Emperor Nan continued. Next to him, Ren Huangqian asked Yi Futian, shall we go check it out? Yi Futian pondered for a moment, then agreed. We might as well. Previously there were many relics in the original realm, and he had never had the desire to go, wanting to give other people their opportunities. However, he was curious to see this other continent that had appeared in the original realm. Then let's go straight away, said Ren Huangqian. Please lead the way, Elder. Yi Futian nodded, and the group immediately set off on their journey. They leaped into the sky and left the Heavenly Mandate Academy, heading towards the boundless void. The land of the original realm was the void world that was formed after the collapse of the heavenly path. The 3,000 realms of the Great Path was the area of human cultivation. This area was not considered large, but beyond the 3,000 realms of the Great Path, there was nothing but an endless void, full of unknowns. For example, Ziwei segmentum was now visible in the boundless void, and so were all those major relics that had made their appearances one after the other. Yi Futian didn't know the actual size of the original realm, and no one else really knew anything about the original realm either. Perhaps only Donghuang the Great and other great emperors knew some of its history. At this time, a new continent was floating in the endless void of the original realm. This continent was lying in the void, a faint brilliance emanating from within. It was as if it had existed here since the beginning of time, and that it was a part of this vast space. Yi Futian and the others passed through the edges of the continent and continued moving upward. They saw that there were cultivators on the edge of the continent at this time, but they seemed to be quite accustomed to everything that was happening in front of them, as they did not act surprised. How did this continent come about? Yi Futian asked when he beheld the sight in front of him. The news we heard was that this continent has been traveling through the endless void, having been exiled for a countless number of years, and has not made its appearance until now, Emperor Nan responded. Yi Futian looked lost in thoughts. If this were the case, then that would explain the reactions of those cultivators on the continent. A world that had been exiled in the endless emptiness would obviously get used to all of this, and may even felt what they saw now was pretty mundane. But who had the terrible ability to exile an entire continent? Yi Futian, and the others continued forward towards the continent. The cultivators on the continent looked up at Futian and the others as they passed, but then bowed their heads and went back to their own businesses. Similar occurrences had been happening recently, as cultivators from the outside came to their continent, so they had grown accustomed to it. The cultivation of these people is awesome, Futian whispered as he walked forward. The cultivators on this continent felt extraordinary to him. Even those on the fringe of the continent were not at a low level. The lowest cultivation turned out to be the Saint Plain. If it's a continent that has gone through tribulations, then it must be an extraordinary continent, Ren Huangchen whispered. Everyone nodded in agreement. If this continent had really been exiled in the endless void, and if it was able to survive until this day, then neither the continent itself nor the cultivators on it would be ordinary. Otherwise, it would have already been annihilated in its long history. The group meandered forward aimlessly. Although this continent was newly discovered with cultivators, it was different from Ziwei Segmentum, which was a field of stars. Here it was merely a continent. Looking from another angle, the continent might have just been a place for the most powerful figures in ancient times. Of course, even for top Ren Huang, this continent was still massive, at least for someone in Futian's realm. They continued to travel through the continent, but still didn't seem to have reached the central area. Futian and the others looked at everything on the continent below. It didn't seem too different from Divine Prefecture and the 3,000 realms of the Great Path. As far as cities, mountains, jungles, and cultivators were concerned, except that the aura of these cultivators on this continent was somewhat different. Generally speaking, their realm seemed to be a little higher. Shall we go down and make some inquiries? Ren Huangchen asked Futian. Very well. Futian understood his meaning and agreed. Instantly, Ren Huangchen moved, and in a flash was aiming towards the sky below. Not long after, Ren Huangchen returned and said, "Same as the rumors. This continent is known as Shini Continent by the cultivators who resided upon it. According to them, it is a continent abandoned by the gods in ancient times. It has been floating in the void world for many years, constantly moving, and now appears in the original realm. As to the reason, they are as clueless as anyone. If we want the truth, we could go to Shini City, which is the center of this continent, and also where the strongest cultivators are." Futian nodded. So this was Shini Continent. Even the cultivators on the continent knew that they were being abandoned by the gods once upon a time. But judging from their present situation, could the abandonment have been, in fact, a form of protection? Because of the abandonment, the continent did not perish and was able to see the light of day. "Let's go," said Futian. "Do these cultivators on the continent, like the ones in Ziwei Segmentum, know the origins of their own continent?" I was also curious about that, so I did some research. According to them, generations upon generations of ancestors have been exploring the continent for many years, wanting to see other worlds of cultivation and cultivators. After reaching the peak level, they discovered that this continent has great limitations, and the world seemed far too small. However, for years immemorial, they have not discovered anything until now. They have ascertained that all the legends were true. They were abandoned and exiled by the gods, and now they have truly come into contact with the outside world, Ren Huangchen explained. Futian appeared thoughtful. They were not the only ones who were curious about this continent. The cultivators on the continent, too, had never stopped their search for the outside world until they had come to the original realm and discovered the truth. Perhaps they were just as curious about the original realm as anyone else. So, the top forces from original realm should have already gone to Shini City already, Futian commented. Ren Huangchen nodded. Then the group continued on its way in their mighty formation. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 2321, Midair Collision. Chapter 2321, Midair Collision. Shini City, the main city of this continent. When Futian and the others arrived in Shini City, they felt an overpowering ancient aura. The architecture of this city was towering and ancient, full of solemnity, holding the aura of the Great Path. Its buildings were extremely sturdy, which was different from the structures found in the Divine Prefecture and the original realm. Perhaps this was because the continent had constantly been traveling through the storms in the void, so its buildings had to be incredibly sturdy to withstand the abuse of the weather, lest they should be destroyed by those incessant storms. After Futian and the others arrived in this main city, they felt many divine consciousnesses scanning them. They were all powerful. Shini City was now the gathering place of powerful cultivators from all sides. Besides top local cultivators, there were also cultivators from other major worlds. They were paying close attention to everything. The arrival of Futian and the others had clearly attracted some attention. Shini City was vast, but the distance that could be covered by the divine consciousness of those top figures was also quite considerable. 4 giant-level figures, their divine consciousness was sufficient to cover an entire city. Behind Futian, the divine consciousness of Renhuang Chun and other cultivators spread out, surveilling the cultivators inside Shini City. Futian himself did the same. He stood high above the sky as he released his divine consciousness and let it sweeping through this vast and endless area. He saw an area of note that had many cultivators gathering there. It seemed that many cultivators of the top forces from the original realm were crowding around that area. Furthermore, that extraordinary place piqued his curiosity as well. The aura emanated from there was incredibly terrifying. "Let's go," Futian said, and his group of people immediately moved towards that area. Everyone looked particularly serious. Obviously, Futian was not the only one who realized this. The others had also noticed the odd phenomenon there. It didn't take long before they came to the outskirt of the area. This area was very extensive, and there were cultivators from various top forces stationed in different directions. Among them, some of the forces had cultivators with terrifying aura, along with shockingly powerful lineups. Previously, compared with other top forces, the camp of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, as represented by Futian, was definitely a strong one. Apart from their lack of a powerful existence who had survived the second divine tribulation, few forces could be compared with them. However, in this city of the relic, he discovered several forces that were stronger than theirs. The Dark World was a foregone conclusion. The Infernal King was there with top figures of many forces from the Dark World. In addition, there were many cultivators from the empty divine realm, which Futian had not seen before. Obviously, they had come here after the changes in the original realm had intensified. If these 2 principalities had arrived for a while, in another position, there was a group of powerful men with extraordinary temperament, exuding awe-inspiring righteousness. Every one of them had an outstanding posture and unparalleled style. And any one of them seemed to possess a particularly stunning style. Are those the cultivators from the human realm? Futian thought. Cultivators from the devil world were in another direction, and their temperament was unmistakable. Xiao Mu, who Futian had defeated, was also among them. The Western world was composed of Buddhist cultivators, and would be easily identifiable. By way of deduction, these could only be cultivators from the heaven realm or the human realm. However, the heaven realm was shrouded in mystery and had undergone major travesties. This group of cultivators had such an outstanding temperament that the only possibility was that they were cultivators from the human realm. Aside from that, there were many top forces from Divine Prefecture, including some with astounding temperaments. After all, the original realm was still considered the territory belonging to Divine Prefecture, so it was not surprising that most of these cultivators were from Divine Prefecture. Top forces from all sides were represented here, but clearly, that was not the case with other realms. Some of the top figures from Divine Prefecture were not any lesser than the cultivators from imperial palaces of each world. Here, ordinary genius talents were eclipsed. While Futian observed these cultivators, other cultivators were also observing him, as many divine consciousnesses fell upon him. Clearly, they already knew who Futian was. The dark world and the devil world needed no introduction, and many in the divine prefecture also knew of him. Those cultivators who were constantly scanning Yi Futian with their divine consciousness were mostly people who had never seen him before, but knew him only by reputation. He was the genius talent who ruled the original realm, as a Runhuang in the 7th realm, and the #1 man in the original realm. He was the one who had suppressed all the geniuses in the divine prefecture, the heir of several great emperors, and no one who could compete with him. In addition, there was also a mysterious teacher in Four Corner Village, who was solidly behind him, protecting him. He who might even be a mysterious cultivator of the imperial realm. Many of these divine consciousness that landed on Yi Futian seemed quite impertinent, and it displeased him. Peeping using the divine consciousness itself was an impolite act, and mostly it was done with a quick sweep, enough to know the existence of the other. However, if the scanning was done back and forth for a prolonged period of time, it was regarded as an act of open insolence. However, at this moment many were behaving rudely. They had been looking up and down at Yi Futian, as their divine consciousness continued to scan him. Some of the divine consciousnesses were particularly rude, which caused Yi Futian to frown. He laughed coldly, sending out his own divine consciousness instantly. It collided with that other divine consciousness. Some of them retreated on their own, but some persisted, choosing to confront him head-on. Although Yi Futian was not from any imperial palace, he was the heir of several great emperors, and lord of the original realm. His position was so exceptional that no matter who challenged him, he would never back down. A super-aggressive divine consciousness collided with Yi Futian's. When he traced that divine consciousness, Yi Futian found its owner. A group of remarkable characters stood together, one of whom was wearing a golden robe, richly decorated. His aura was stunning with coercion that could only be found on an upper Renhuang. He was extremely domineering, and he was surrounded by brilliant golden divine glory. Cultivator from the empty divine realm, Yi Futian remarked to himself, recognizing where the other was from. Boom! A violent storm swept across the sky and headed his way. The cultivator from the empty divine realm cast a look at Yi Futian from very far away, and those eyes seemed to penetrate the space and landed directly on Yi Futian, with an overpowering spirit, like a majestic and commanding god, examining Yi Futian closely. 20-some years ago in the original realm, the empty divine realm had tasted defeat in Yi Futian's hands. A sudden coercion of this great path was felt keenly by everyone, as an equally astonishing momentum erupted from Yi Futian's body at the same time. The divine light circulated above the body of the great path, and a violent roar was heard, booming non-stop, terrorizing its audience. When the two forces collided in midair, an invisible storm manifested in the surrounding spaces, so that cultivators from all sides were compelled to watch the two colliding in the air. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. When the crowd saw the scene, they understood what was going on. It looked like the cultivator from the empty divine realm intended to test out Yi Futian's abilities. When the crowd saw the scene, they understood what was going on. It looked like the cultivator from the empty divine realm intended to test out Yi Futian's abilities. Now all the cultivators from various worlds knew of Yi Futian's existence. Even if they had never seen him before, they had at least heard of him from word of mouth. Many people were discussing him even now. He was the top monstrous figure in the original realm, a young ruler, and the successor of the inheritance of a few great emperors. The cultivator from the empty divine realm and Yi Futian stood at different locations. They were very far away from each other. However, for figures at their level, this distance amounted to nothing. The frenzy storm swept towards the region where Yi Futian was, but none of the buildings were destroyed. This caused many people to be impressed by the sturdiness of the buildings around. Right at this moment, the cultivator from the empty divine realm flew up into the sky. His whole body shone with brilliant golden divine light. Xiao Mu from the devil world looked in his direction. This cultivator from the empty divine realm also had 8th tier cultivation like Xiao Mu. However, It was most likely very hard for him to pose any threat to Yi Futian. Golden divine light enveloped the space. The illusory figure of an ancient god appeared. It raised its arm and instantly sent out a punch. Disregarding the long distance, the golden fist tore the space apart and blasted towards Yi Futian. This attack was similar to the one Yi Futian had experienced before. It seemed like many cultivators from the empty mountain were proficient in this kind of divine technique. Yi Futian extended his arm and pointed a finger in the air. An indestructible sword actually formed, and it directly collided with the golden fist. A terrifying destructive storm erupted, expanding towards the surrounding area. Impressive! Many people exclaimed upon seeing Yi Futian's attack. Yi Futian comprehended the body refinement techniques from the divine corpse of Shenjia the Great Emperor. The body refinement techniques allowed Yi Futian to forge the divine body of the Great Path. His flesh could now become the way and unleash unparalleled might. His casual pointing contained both the strength of his flesh and the power of swordsmanship. When the two powers combined, a powerful force burst forth. The other party was also aware that his attack couldn't possibly shake Yi Futian. Otherwise, Yi Futian would not be qualified for his title as the top monstrous figure of the original realm. A gigantic illusory figure suddenly appeared and loomed over the region. Even the sky was tainted gold as golden beams of light shone across the land. In the sky above, a frightening golden storm was brewing. It was menacing. All the cultivators in this region raised their heads to look up. Then countless arms appeared behind the ancient god. The arms veiled the heavens. All the arms attacked at once. In an instant, the entire sky was covered with golden fists. All the fists charged towards Yi Futian, seemingly wanting to overwhelm him. The divine fists rained down from the sky. Everything was distorted due to the punches. The terrifying punches shattered the space and smashed down towards Yi Futian, intending to bury him in them. The attack was absolutely domineering. Yi Futian raised his head and swept a glance at the fists. The space of the great path froze, and rumbling sounds thundered. Doors of space materialized all around Yi Futian. The doors engulfed the golden punches which rained down on him. With Yi Futian's body as the center, the doors of space formed a unique space. It was a miniature world. However, even with the defense, the frenzy fist will traversed across the space, causing the miniature world to shake violently. The doors showed signs of cracking. Yi Futian's expression was calm. He cast a glance in the distance. An alarming sword will instantly erupted from his divine body of the great path. He pointed a finger at the sky. A divine sword immediately traversed the space and crushed the incoming fists. The divine sword shot up to the high heavens. It was a gigantic starry divine sword, yet it also contained the menacing sword will of fleeting. All the cultivators turned their attention to Yi Futian. Yi Futian stood at his spot quietly and wielded the divine sword in his hand. The scene was magnificent. He swung his arm, and instantly, the starry divine sword slashed down. It cleaved the space and shattered the countless fists. The sword then plowed towards the cultivator from the empty divine realm. The cultivator from the empty divine realm had an indifferent expression. The golden illusory figure of the god, which was coalesced by the cultivator, extended both its arms and made a grab. When the sword descended, the illusory figure grabbed it with both its hands. Shocking rumbling sounds thundered. The sword continued to slash downwards, causing cracks to form on the pair of golden arms. Bang! With a loud bang, the starry divine sword which spanned across the sky crumbled into pieces. However, the arms of the golden illusory figure of the god were also chopped off. Yi Futian didn't stop attacking. He pointed a finger upwards and immediately, a diagram formed in the sky. It was a yin-yang diagram. The diagram kept expanding. The sun and the moon seemed to be up in the sky at the same time, while the stars twinkled mysteriously. The power of yin and the solar power, two polar opposite powers, appeared concurrently in the yin-yang diagram. The powers gave birth to sword will that caused the cultivator from the empty divine realm to feel threatened even from a distance. Ren Huangyi is undoubtedly the top monstrous figure in the original realm. I'm impressed by your ability, said the 8th-tier Renhuang from across the space. This was his first time speaking to Yi Futian. Prior to this, he attacked Yi Futian without saying anything first. It seemed like he wanted to take revenge on Yi Futian for meddling in the affairs of the empty divine realm before this. The outcome of our battle has yet to be decided. It's still too early to speak of admiration, Yi Futian said indifferently. As he said this, the floating yin-yang diagram radiated a shocking halo of the swords of catastrophe. The halo outshone the sun, just like how the other party intended to overwhelm him with fist will. Yi Futian returned the favor by having the divine swords of catastrophe rain down on him. The divine swords flooded the space and charged towards the 8th-tier cultivator. The cultivator took a step forward. Loud rumbling sounds reverberated. The gigantic golden illusory figure of the god coalesced. The radiance behind the god shone far and wide. It formed a spatial barrier, which covered the area where the cultivator was. Swoosh! Countless divine swords rained down. The swords infused with the power of Yin, and the solar power landed on the light shroud. Slowly, cracks began to form on it, and pieces of the light shroud were being chipped off. Soon, the defensive light shroud formed by the illusory figure of the god was torn apart and disintegrated. The divine sword slashed downwards with a momentum that could destroy everything in their path. Right at this moment, a cultivator from Empty Mountain raised his hand. A golden geomantic compass appeared in the sky. It kept expanding as it dazzled with colorful lights. When the divine swords descended, they were sucked into the geomantic compass. Then they disappeared without a trace. It was as though the swords had been engulfed by the compass. The yin-yang diagram floated high in the sky, while the spatial geomantic compass guarded down below. The two faced each other. When Yi Futian saw this scene, he waved his hand, and the yin-yang diagram immediately disappeared. He looked into the distance and said, "As expected of the cultivators from Empty Mountain, I'm impressed by your ability." Yi Futian said the same line that the other party had said to him before. However, the subtext was significantly different. Yi Futian was clearly mocking the other party. After all, the cultivator from Empty Mountain attacked Yi Futian first. Yet in the end, he needed to seek aid from another top cultivator in order to block off Yi Futian's attack. The cultivator's action was slightly disgraceful. From this battle, all the cultivators from various worlds had a better understanding of Yi Futian's abilities. He was very strong. Even an 8th-tier cultivator from Empty Mountain was no match to him. Yi Futian didn't even move from his spot. He merely stood at his original spot and sent out attacks from across the space. Yet his attacks were already unbearable for the 8th-tier cultivator. Yi Futian's combat ability was indeed astonishing. The cultivator from Empty Mountain was stronger than most of the cultivators. This meant that even among the 8th-tier Renhuangs, only very few of them could defeat Yi Futian. All the cultivators paid attention to this battle. Moreover, they were all exceptional figures from various top forces. Many top figures were ablaze with fighting, while as they looked at Yi Futian, they were eager to test out how strong he was, and whether or not they could be a match for him. Chapter 23-23, The Lost Clan. Chapter 23-23, The Lost Clan. Yi Futian sensed the battle intent, which wreathed around him. However, he ignored it. All those who were here were top figures from various worlds. It was normal for them to want to contend with the most monstrous figures from other worlds. Yi Futian's arrival caused them to focus their attention on him. Even without him around, the rest of them would still contend among themselves. Yi Futian's will expanded towards the unusual region ahead. The region was packed with buildings that were sturdy and simple in design. The buildings were cone-shaped and were spread out across various locations. The total space occupied by the buildings was wide. The buildings seemed to be surrounding a main building, which emanated a mysterious aura. Unfortunately, the power around formed a barrier, sealing off the main building. No one could probe any further with their will. With his will, Yi Futian could see that many cultivators were dwelling in the region. Their auras were formidable. Besides that, their auras were somewhat similar, indicating that they most likely cultivated the same techniques. They gave off an otherworldly vibe. Yi Futian and his group had just arrived, but some of the other cultivators had been here for a long time. Yet, they remained outside and had not entered the region. From the looks of it, it was not that they had no intention of entering the region, but rather, their entries were blocked by the people inside. It was intriguing. Had the cultivators inside the region stopped the cultivators from various worlds from entering? The people gathered here were all top figures from various worlds. Every one of them was a terrifying existence. Some of them had even undergone divine tribulations of the Great Path. How did the locals manage to block them from advancing into the region? Yi Futian was not the only one who thought of this problem. All the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy realized it too. Through transmitted thoughts, Renhuang Chun told Yi Futian. The cultivators inside are not simple. They might be very strong. Yi Futian nodded in agreement. There was definitely a reason behind every abnormal situation. The scenario before their eyes now was clearly abnormal. In terms of combat abilities, even the cultivators of the Ziwei segmentum back then could not hold off the lineups that were here today. The former would not even risk holding off the latter either. However, right now the cultivators had indeed been blocked from entering the region. This was obviously abnormal. Let's find a place to rest in Shini City for now. We'll wait and see how things go, suggested Renhuang Qin. The top figures from various worlds had all settled down at different places. It was unwise for Yi Futian and his group to stick their heads out. It was better for them to observe the situation and then figure out exactly what kind of place the unusual region was. All right, replied Yi Futian, nodding. The group left where they were and found a simple tavern to rest. They were hoping to gather some information about the unusual region here. After all, they rushed here in a hurry. They made their way here right after they found out the center of the Shini continent was here. Therefore, they knew nothing about the unusual region. There were quite a lot of people drinking in the tavern. Occasionally, some locals would look at Yi Futian and his group. Even though the locals were curious, none of them asked Yi Futian anything. All of them appeared calm. Many people had gathered in the city recently. They knew where these visitors were from, so they got used to seeing new faces. All the cultivators in the Shini continent had high receptivity. On the other hand, Yi Futian discovered something astonishing to him. Along his way here, he had realized that the cultivation planes of the cultivators in this continent were generally higher than that of the outside world. Moreover, the cultivators in this continent had exceptional temperaments. This observation held true, especially after they arrived at Shini City. In this ordinary tavern alone, there were a few renhuangs. Furthermore, Yi Futian actually acutely sensed a hint of animosity from a few locals. He had no idea why they were hostile to his presence. More and more people slowly gathered in the tavern. The people who came all had rather high cultivation planes. There were even some top-tier renhuangs around. They sat down in the tavern quietly, as though they weren't paying attention to the other guests. However, Yi Futian could vaguely sense that these people had gathered here because of him and his group. Renhuang Qin frowned. As he lowered his head to take a sip from his cup, he said to Yi Futian through transmitted thoughts, "Palace Lord, aside from people in this tavern, there seem to be more and more people heading towards where we are." Yi Futian expanded his will, and it covered a large area. In his consciousness, many images flashed past. There were a lot of locals who appeared around those cultivators from the top forces. On top of that, more and more people were gradually making their way towards this region. There was a constant stream of renhuangs traversing across the sky and landing in the city. What are they here for? Yi Futian asked through transmitted thoughts. Should I go check things out? Renhuang Qin suggested. Just when Yi Futian was about to say yes, a group of people entered the tavern. They were acquaintances of Yi Futian. Among them were Zhou Muhuang, vice chief of the Shangqing Domain Chief's Manor, and his sister Zhou Lingxi. Yi Futian also spotted the chief of the Domain Chief's Manor. He had come here personally. Clearly, the chief was also here in the original realm, due to the changes that had occurred to it. The chief of the Shangqing Domain Chief's Manor approached Yi Futian. Yi Futian raised his head and looked at the other party. He greeted, "Greetings, Chief." Yi Futian sounded polite, but he didn't stand up to salute the chief. He merely nodded his head. Under normal circumstances, even though Yi Futian's current status was extraordinary, he would still stand up and bow to the chiefs, since he was their junior. However, Yi Futian didn't have a good impression of the chief of the Shangqing domain chief's manner, due to past incidents. Therefore he didn't do so. The other party noticed this difference in detail too, but he didn't show any signs of dissatisfaction, due to Yi Futian's current status. Instead, Chief Zhou said, "I did not expect Ren Huangyi to attain such a great achievement in such a short time, after our meeting at the Shangqing domain. Congratulations." "Chief Zhou is too polite. Have a seat," Yi Futian responded. Since the other party showed signs of becoming friends with him, he would naturally treat them courteously. Chief Zhou and his group sat down. Zhou Lingxi said, "When I first met Ren Huangyi, I was already certain that you're an exceptional figure, but you much faster than I had imagined. Now I pale in significance compared to you. Princess Lingxi has praised me too highly," Yi Futian said with a smile. "May I know what orders you have for me? My words can't be counted as an order for you. Yi Futian, you're the ruler of the original realm now, so you don't have to be so polite with me," Chief Zhou said bluntly. "I'm sure you are aware of the situation here. Those people are here because of us. They are here to protect that place, the center of the Shini continent, and the dwelling place of the Lost Clan." "The Lost Clan?" Yi Futian revealed an intrigued expression. The name of the clan was indeed extraordinary. Yes, the Lost Clan. Rumor has it that they called themselves the Lost Clan after they were abandoned by the gods. Since then, they have been on a journey of defying the gods, Chief Zhou explained. "Before your arrival, my group was already here. The Lost Clan is very strong, far stronger than what we expected. The cultivators from various worlds were shocked by their abilities. Hence, nobody dares to venture into their region now. The cultivators of the Lost Clan have frightening willpower. It might be due to the environment of this continent. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters." Chapter 23-24. Rejection. Chapter 23-24. Rejection. Yi Futian listened quietly. He had already thought about this point. They should be one of the last groups of people to arrive. The top forces here had dispersed to different locations after they arrived. They had not ventured into the unusual region. Clearly, something had occurred before for the cultivators here, not to dare to venture into the region. If that was the case, he roughly guessed the reason why the domain chief of the Shangqing domain chief's manor had come looking for him. Chief Zhou said, "According to my intelligence, after the Shini continent was abandoned, it has been traversing through the void all this while, floating among the various destructive storms. Over countless years, it experienced countless extinction-level calamities. However, it has lasted to this day. The main contributor for this is the Lost Clan." He continued explaining to Yi Futian, "The Lost Clan is not a family clan, but rather is formed from the members of the entire Shini continent. Anyone who joins the Lost Clan will offer up their lives. They will take an oath with their spiritual soul to protect this continent. The Lost Clan appears to be a family clan on the surface, but it is forged from the combined will of the entire Shini continent. It is indestructible. It is precisely because of them that we can witness everything before us now." From the other party's words, Yi Futian immediately understood the reason for the animosity from the surrounding cultivators. At the same time, he also understood why the various cultivators had all rushed over here. It turned out that this was the center of their faith, the place that the members of this entire continent wanted to protect. From the looks of it, the Lost Clan had protected the Shini continent through countless catastrophes and calamities. In the end, the continent had made its way to the original realm. From this perspective, the members of the Lost Clan were admirable. Yi Futian felt a faint sense of respect well up inside of him. Such temperament was noteworthy. It was just like how he wanted to protect the original realm. Their belief was far stronger than his own. It was because the Shinny continent was always on the brink of destruction. As the continent traversed through the void, the lost clan had no sense of security and could be destroyed at any moment. Such dire circumstances formed an extraordinary clan. It similarly forged a group of exceptional cultivators. It was no surprise then that he discovered that their average cultivation planes were higher than those of any other continent that he had been to, including the lands of the Divine Prefecture. The people here were on average very powerful. Futian also noticed something else. On this vast Shinny continent, the population was not very large and seemed rather scarce. Only here in Shinny City was the population denser. Across the eons, the harsh environment must have already performed natural selection on the Shinny continent again and again. Hence, there was the Shinny continent and the lost clan that they saw today. Futian understood this in his mind, but still did not speak up. He was waiting for the other party to bring it up. After Chief Zhou finished introducing all of this, only then did he say to Futian, "There is a barrier in the region of the lost clan that seals away a building. Prior to this, we wanted to enter that place. However, we encountered obstacles. Inside there seems to be a secret zone. From within it, many extremely powerful cultivators emerged and deterred the various top forces from entering, hence, resulting in the situation you see before you." "You want to get inside?" asked Futian. "Of course, it is not just me. Cultivators from the various worlds all want to enter and take a look around. Is the lost clan hiding some mysterious secrets in there? Is it related to the great emperors of old? If we can get inside, we will certainly come across huge discoveries," continued Chief Zhou. "Hence, I have come looking for you. I actually want to form an alliance with you here." The chief of the Shangqing Domain Chief's manor wanted to ally with Futian. Naturally, it was not because of Futian's cultivation plane, but rather the powers behind him, as well as the astonishing talent that Futian himself displayed. After all, Futian had proven himself so many times before. There seemed to be no relic that possessed the inheritance of the great emperors that had not been claimed by him. The scene before them was somewhat surreal. When Futian came to the Shangqing Domain Chief's manor back then, the chief had not considered him worthy of his attention. Back then, he merely wanted Zhou Muhuang and Zhou Lingxi to win over Futian, recruit him under the chief's control, and make Futian his underling. However, now, he wanted to ally with Futian. Futian looked at Chief Zhou, but he shook his head. He seemed to have decided to reject the other party's offer. This scene caused Chief Zhou to reveal a strange look. He took the initiative to extend Futian an invitation, but the other party had actually rejected his request for an alliance. The expression of Zhou Muhuang, who was beside him, also changed slightly. His gaze suddenly turned sharp as he looked at Futian. Even though Futian's status was extraordinary, their standing was also high. The Shangqing Domain Chief's manor was the most powerful force in the Shangqing Domain. They had proactively come to ally, but Futian had actually turned them down completely. "Chief, every time a relic appears, I also offend the various major forces. This time, cultivators from the various worlds have come here, including the forces of the human realm, the devil world, and the ancient god clan from the Divine Prefecture. Even with the power of the Heavenly Mandate Academy, I don't believe that I can deal with all of them. Can Chief Zhou handle them?" asked Futian. This caused Chief Zhou to frown. Futian continued, "If we can't obtain anything, there is no meaning to forming an alliance. If we truly manage to obtain rewards, will you stand with the Heavenly Mandate Academy to face the animosity of the various forces together? I believe that you know the answer yourself." To put it bluntly, the Shangqing Domain Chief's manor sought an alliance, just so that they could rely on his power to obtain rewards. However, when the Heavenly Mandate Academy truly faced danger, and if they went against the superpowers, the Shangqing Domain Chief's manor would most likely not dare to offend them. The so-called alliance would naturally be meaningless. When he heard Futian's words, Chief Zhou's expression turned sullen. He appeared somewhat displeased. Futian exposing this point was actually a slap in the face for him. Although what Futian said was true, from his attitude, It was clear that Yi Futian didn't want to deal with him. If that is the case, farewell then, said Chief Zhou. He then led the cultivators of the domain chief's manor away, with a somewhat displeased expression. Zhou Lingxi looked back and glanced at Yi Futian. However, she did not say anything, but followed the group and left. After the cultivators of the Shangqing domain chief's manor left, Emperor Nan said, "Such a direct rejection will probably offend others." "This isn't the first time anyway," said Yi Futian nonchalantly. This was not the first time the Shangqing domain chief's manor was displeased with him. During the struggle over the sacred remains of Xinjia the Great Emperor, the domain chief's manor had already been very dissatisfied with him. Back then, Zhou Muhuang had even headed over to Four Corner Village to demand the village be handed over to him. It could be said that both sides were not on good terms to begin with. Since that was the case, Yi Futian did not need to fake politeness and accept the other party's alliance. Responded Emperor Nan as he nodded his head. He did not mind anyway. Yi Futian had also offended other forces aside from the Shangqing domain chief's manor. In the previous struggles over the relics, he had offended countless top forces. However, his offenses towards them could not be considered huge vendettas, merely fights over personal interests. Will swept over them. It seemed that the arrival of Chief Zhou just now had drawn the attention of some people. They were spying on the situation over here. Yi Futian did not pay it much heed. However, he was somewhat curious about the Lost Clan. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Chapter 23-25. Entering the Lost Clan. Chapter 23-25. Entering the Lost Clan. Yi Futian waited quietly in the tavern. Everyone seemed calm enough. They too were probably just waiting. While they were chatting, the entire tavern suddenly quieted down. Yi Futian and the others were alarmed when they saw the majority of the cultivators in the tavern get up from their seats. This collective action surprised Yi Futian and the others more than just a little. He didn't expect so many of the cultivators in the tavern were loyal to the Lost Clan. Outside the tavern, there was a group of people walking in this direction. Suddenly, all those who stood up greeted the cultivators who were coming this way. Their respect was clearly coming from their hearts, not simply a matter of formality. This sight was actually quite touching for those who witnessed it. This group of men came in front of Yi Futian and the others. When Yi Futian looked up at them, he already knew these were the cultivators from the Lost Clan. He knew it when they came. He just didn't know why they came to him. In his assessment of these cultivators from the Lost Clan, he could see all of them were powerful in their cultivation with high realms. They weren't clad in lavish clothes, but were dressed rather plainly. Some of them even had tattered clothing simply draped on their shoulders, revealing bronze-toned skin underneath. Even in such unremarkable attire, nothing could conceal their extraordinary temperament. Just standing there, they felt quite solid like towering mountains. There was not a strong sense of authority, but everyone could detect a strong sense of will and belief. It was a unique temperament from within. Yi Futian had known enough powerful cultivators to know that not many people were like this. But all the cultivators in front of him were like this. Aside from that, they exuded a great feeling of power just by standing there. They were like some indestructible existence. We are cultivators from the Lost Clan, here to welcome Emperor Yi and cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy, Ziwei Segmentum, as well as Four Corner Village. The person leading the group greeted Yi Futian and the others. His hands were clasped together, somewhat resembling Buddhist etiquette, but it was a little different. However, his sincerity was obviously from the heart, as he treated the whole affair with great importance. What piqued Yi Futian's interest was that these people had actually discovered their identities, knew where they were from, and who they were. It seemed that after the Shini continent appeared in the original realm, not only did the cultivators of the original realm come to explore it, but the cultivators from the Lost Clan had also gone to the original realm to explore on their own, hence their knowledge of them. Faced with such courtesy from the other party, Yi Futian got up and returned their gesture. Elder is overly polite. If our abrupt visit has disturbed the lost clan, we ask for your forgiveness. No disturbance to speak of. We have been floating in the void world for many years, and have never seen anyone from the outside. Now that there are visitors from everywhere, please know that the Lost Clan is not inhospitable. The Lost Clan is more than happy to make friends with Emperor Yi and all of you. That's why we came here to invite Emperor Yi to be our guest, so that you may get to know a bit more about us. The man continued. He caught Yi Futian and the others by surprise. The Lost Clan had invited him to be their guest. Weren't they worried about letting wolves into the chicken coops, so to speak? Anyone could tell that the cultivators from the original realm and the other major worlds had unfriendly intentions, and each came with their own designs in mind. Yi Futian looked at the man and asked, "Did the elder mean to invite us to the Lost Clan for a visit?" "Yes, exactly. But because we don't know you, we want to first invite Emperor Yi to visit the Lost Clan, so that you may get to know us." The voice of the other man was calm and full of energy. Many cultivators around him looked at Yi Futian. Now that the Lost Clan had invited many people, would Yi Futian agree to go? However, the cultivators from the Heavenly Mandate Academy frowned, and were a little unsure. They had already known that the Lost Clan was a highly unusual clan, whose strength may be great beyond their imagination. Perhaps even the Heavenly Mandate Academy itself might not be enough to contend with them, let alone Yi Futian on his own. Once Yi Futian entered the Lost Clan, he would be under the control of the other party. If the Lost Clan had some malevolent intent, he would end up in a very undesirable situation. You don't know much about us, and we don't know much about the Lost Clan either. It may not be suitable for him to travel by himself. Fangai stepped forward. Yi Futian's safety was of great importance to them. This was their number one concern. In that case, we don't have to invite only Emperor Yi. Even if every one of you joins him in the Lost Clan, it's all the same to us. The man bowed slightly and replied. His mannerism was still courteous, but there was an immensely strong confidence in his tone. What he didn't say with his words was that if the Lost Clan had any bad intentions toward them, the outcome would be the same no matter how many of them attended. So there was no need to invite just Yi Futian. The cultivators of the Heavenly Mandate Academy looked at them in silence, but Yi Futian smiled and said, "I believe in you, Elder, and I am willing to go with you for a visit." He had been curious about the Lost Clan before. Now that the Lost Clan had taken the initiative to invite him, he was willing to go along and take a look. "Thank you, Emperor Yi, for your understanding." The cultivator from the Lost Clan continued. "In that case, Emperor Yi, please come with me." "Elder, please lead the way," Yi Futian replied. Immediately the cultivator from the Lost Clan led the way in front, while Yi Futian followed behind, and cultivators from Heavenly Mandate Academy walked out of the tavern to see them off. As they spread their divine consciousness far and wide, they discovered that other cultivators, who had also been invited, were heading in the direction of the Lost Clan. It seemed that they had not invited just the Heavenly Mandate Academy, but other principalities had been invited as well. No wonder they invited just one person. If they had invited everyone, they might encounter some issues. After a few moments, Yi Futian and the others came to the outskirt of the Lost Clan, and Yi Futian discovered that cultivators were coming from different directions. These people had spread their divine consciousness far and wide, and discovered each other's existence. "Emperor Yi, please enter." The man continued as Yi Futian stepped into the Lost Clan. Seeing that other principalities were also invited, Yi Futian understood that the Lost Clan couldn't possibly mean them any harm. Otherwise, they would offend everyone at once. And no matter how powerful the Lost Clan was, they could not possibly endure collective hostilities from every principality. So what was their intention? Inside, the Lost Clan was massive, with a sense of great solemnity. The buildings within its bounds were simple and scattered, but they felt weighty, just like the cultivators from the Lost Clan. Several cultivators began coming out of a simple room, looking at Yi Futian and other cultivators from different principalities. Suddenly, Yi Futian felt a heavy pressure. This pressure was not intended for him, but was a signature specific to the cultivators of the Lost Clan. It was a substantial presence that made others feel its heft. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. Tip: you can use left, right, A and D keyboard keys to browse between chapters. Very soon, the cultivators who entered the Lost Clan from different locations gathered together. Every one of them was an exceptional character in their own right. Some were strong while some were weaker, all at various realms. Some had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path, and some were heirs of lofty statuses from top principalities. Very soon, the cultivators who entered the Lost Clan from different locations gathered together. Every one of them was an exceptional character in their own right. Some were strong while some were weaker, all at various realms. Some had survived the divine tribulation of the Great Path, and some were heirs of lofty statuses from top principalities. These cultivators were also here by invitation of the Lost Clan. They now appeared in front of that forbidden building. Futian looked at the forbidden place in front. The space seemed heavily distorted. This was the center of the entire Lost Clan, and all the buildings seemed to surround the forbidden place in front of him. Obviously, this was a place of importance for the Lost Clan. Other cultivators knew better. They had seen many top cultivators from the Lost Clan who came out of this place before. Everyone please. The cultivators of the Lost Clan stepped forward to guide them. Suddenly, a door swung opened in the twisted space in front of them. Futian and the other cultivators stepped into its threshold, and it felt as if they were traveling through a tunnel of time and space, entering another world. There was a terrifying spatial power of the Great Path here. They could even feel many places inside, with distorted spaces as well. It was so deep ahead that no end could be seen. In here, their divine consciousness seemed to be distorted as well, unable to cover as great of a distance as they used to before, so they had to resort to using only their eyesight. However, as far as their eyes could see, there were many greatly capable cultivators with their own terrifying aura, accompanied by monstrous cultivations. Just the sight from their eyes alone gave the others invisible coercion. It was as those eyes held a frightening brilliance. "What is this place?" asked a man who appeared no more than 30, and had a most unusual temperament. This man was a talent from the human realm. His appearance seemed typical, but he possessed a pleasant presence. The true core of the Lost Clan. "Didn't you come here to unearth the secrets of the Lost Clan? The true meaning of the Lost Clan lies here," said an elder from the Lost Clan who had led them here. "We can talk while we walk." As he was explaining, he continued to lead the way and took everyone deeper inside. At the same time he said, Shini continent was a land abandoned by the gods in ancient times. For countless years, it had been exiled in the void, having never known which way to go or what would happen tomorrow. It was like facing a night that would never end. According to legends, the Shini continent was not like how it is now in that bygone era. It was perhaps many times larger than today, truly a grand world in every sense of the word. However, in the many years of exile, it had long since fallen apart and broke into different pieces. More than that, many of the cultivators on the continent perished. It was many years ago, a time we referred to as the Dark Ages. The old man of the Lost Clan continued slowly, until later, an original ancestor, the one who created the Lost Clan, came about and banded everyone together in order to fight against the perils of the unknown and realm of death. As the number one cultivator of the continent took command over the cultivators on the continent, they fought against the Dark Ages. From then on, the Shini continent entered the era of the Lost Clan. Futian and the others listened quietly, no one interrupting. The old man was telling them the origin of the Lost Clan, and all of them were interested in this mysterious clan. Furthermore, this ancestor of the Lost Clan must have been a magnificent figure. No one knew what kind of realm he was in, what happened to him, or if he had fallen. After establishing the Lost Clan, extraordinary cultivators of the continent voluntarily joined the clan and worked together to guard Shini continent. So that in a very short time, the Lost Clan became the undisputed premier principality of this land, and the place where everyone held their faith. All those who wanted to join the clan must swear that they are willing to sacrifice everything, including their lives, to protect the continent. The ancestor of the lost clan fulfilled that oath with his own life, as did the rulers in the following generations, and its top figures. They dedicated their lives to ensure the continued existence of the lost clan. Generation upon generation, it was precisely this belief that was guarding the Shin'i continent. Today, the Shin'i continent has finally left the endless darkness and come to the original realm. Before, we thought that this was just another area in the land of the exiles. But then we learned that Shin'i continent might no longer need to experience the darkness as it once did. Futian was quite moved when he heard these words. Did generations of leaders really use their own lives to protect the Shin'i continent? Moreover, the fact that they were top cultivators made it even more remarkable. Such sacrifice required firm conviction and fearless courage to achieve. If so, then everything that happened outside could be explained. Knowing that the lost clan was under threat, cultivators from all parts of the continent had rushed to the same place. If there were a war, those cultivators who came would probably do all they can to fight. This was some amazing faith. Only those who had faced desperation year after year, living in constant darkness, would have such belief, thinking that only if everyone had the same goal to protect the continent as a whole could they survive. If it weren't for those men who persisted in this kind of belief, perhaps Shin'i continent wouldn't be here today. The endeavor of your ancestors generation upon generation was indeed admirable, someone remarked, and everyone seemed to be in awe. No matter what purpose drove them here, hearing this history incited respect from every one of them. They continued moving forward. The inside seemed extremely deep, with no end in sight. Many caves and recesses appeared on both sides, and it seemed that there was a bright divine light inside. The old man said, after our ancestors created the lost clan, they opened up this area here, using them as the last pure land for the lost clan. If the Shin'i continent is broken apart, the people can still seek shelter and continue their existence in exile. The caves in here were left by generations of cultivators from the lost clan and are engraved with their cultivation methods. Later generations had left their deeds inside these caves, so that even if Shin'i continent was broken apart, the people who made it here could still cultivate inside these caves and continued their exile in the endless darkness until the arrival of dawn. This was the worst-case scenario. Everyone nodded slightly, as they started to believe in what the old man was saying. Looking at everything inside, it was true that it appeared as the last refuge of a band of desperate folks. Its existence ensured the continuation of the Shin'i continent. It was a holy land built by the sages before them, who were planning for the worst. Some of the caves in here are now occupied by cultivators who were actively cultivating. The cultivation methods created by our ancestors have been passed down from generation to generation, and they have all been engraved in there, still teaching the later generations, as they inherited the will of our ancestors, while continuing moving forward until this point, where we have come to the original realm and met you all. The old man continued, this is the general situation of the lost clan. You are welcome to walk around and take a look. The Shin'i continent has drifted to the original realm, and naturally, we don't want to be enemies with any of you. We hope to make your acquaintances and become part of this world. If you find any errors, broken links, non-standard content, etc., please let us know so we can fix it as soon as possible. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.